After the release of a recent video made by a popular creator known as the Anime Man, basically talking about his perspective on a concept known as anime tourism, there has been a lot of backlash. In this video, he used an inappropriate analogy, and after facing the reaction of his audience and other creators, he ended up doubling down by saying that it's not that deep.
In his latest video, he actually compares anime tourists to the colonization of the Americas. Are we serious right now? You are really comparing anime becoming mainstream to the death of millions and countless atrocity.
My guy, chill. It's not that deep. May I remind you, we are literally talking about Japanese cartoons. It's really not that deep, okay? I'm sorry you feel that way, but completely misconstruing the point that I made, not understanding what an analogy is, all from a 30-second Twitter clip that comes from a 24-minute YouTube video, and making it way too overly political for your own good is just not my problem, okay?
There are many other creators discussing this topic, and it sparked conversation about anime and politics. For those of you who have not seen the clip and are not familiar with what he said, he basically made an analogy referring to this new generation or new influx of people coming into the anime community as anime tourists, but specifically he made a comparison to the colonization of the Americas. Specifically, he used the words the Columbus era of anime and comparing the influx of new people as like Christopher Columbus colonizing the Americas.
But I remember seeing a comment on like a TikTok or a YouTube video or something where somebody called these anime tourists or at least this new rise or era of anime tourists as the Columbus era of anime. You know, much like Christopher Columbus, who went to the Americas, mistook it for India, and called the natives now a term that I'm not allowed to say anymore, and you know, claimed the land for themselves because you know, he was like, well, I discovered it, and fuck all of you guys. This is my place now. And I was like, holy shit, this is exactly what these anime tourists are doing. They're like coming to these unfamiliar lands, planting their flag in the soil, and going, we own this land now. Out of the way, previous people. Your opinions are irrelevant now because you are old and your time is up and you don't know what good anime is anymore. But at the same time they claim all of this, they don't respect the history of the medium, they don't respect how the evolution has happened, they don't respect the cultural significance behind the evolution of the medium. They just look at it as something like cool and pop and fun.
By this clip alone, it is very clear that it looks pretty bad, and I'm sure that Joey didn't mean anything offensive or targeting any particular communities, but it doesn't change what he said. And it did sound like he was referring to what someone else said and ends up saying it, this is what like a friend said to him or someone, another creator maybe, but it still looks really bad, man. Even if he didn't mean to harm anyone, regardless, it doesn't change the situation, and no matter what kind of positive or intentions that he really meant to do, his words still has consequences. He definitely did not handle the situation well at all. Hey, weebs and weirdos, if you're not familiar with me, hi, my name is A-Tree, and I'm actually an Indigenous YouTube creator. I do cosplay and anime commentary, and if you like that kind of stuff, please subscribe. Check out my other stuff. I am part of a nation that falls under the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which you're probably more familiar with the term Iroquois. It's basically a alliance between a bunch of smaller groups in North America. As an Indigenous person myself, I feel inclined to speak up on this topic, and keep in mind that even though I'm an Indigenous person and I'm representing a whole community, does not mean that I represent it in its entirety. There are a bunch of different opinions and perspectives, and everyone has different views. We are not a monolith, basically. But I still definitely feel like I have a perspective that is worth being heard. Ignoring the analogy that Joey made for a moment, the idea of anime tourism is based on that concept that there have been people who have been part of the community for a long time, majorly before COVID, where they have been bullied or ostracized for their interest in anime or Japanese media. And now with the popularity of anime, feel that those who have bullied him in the past, or people who would have bullied someone like him, are now joining in on the community. Honestly, I totally get the sentiment. I am part of the generation like Gen Z, but you know, you might call me one of those anime tourists. I have been watching anime since I was a kid though. My parents are millennials, but they also had kids very young. And because of that, I ended up taking on a lot of their interests. It also means that my parents aren't much older than Joey. And I've already graduated high school. Do the math as you will. As a kid, I took on a lot of the same interests of what my parents had, one of them being anime. And when I was younger, I would hide away during gym class reading manga with one other person because there's only one person in my entire school who even knew what anime was. We would skip out on gym class instead of doing our exercises. We'd be reading manga when most people our ages only really knew what Pokemon was. I know what it means to be bullied. I didn't have many friends growing up. And during that time, if you were to just go to some random kid and try to explain what Japanese cartoons are, they're gonna think you're kind of weird. Me and my friend, we'd sit in the little corner reading Fruits Basket and Tokyo Mew Mew, and we'd also talk about, my one friend, she really liked Naruto, and I grew up watching Dragon Ball, so we'd argue about which one was better. But we also watched Sailor Moon. Like, there was this one book series I had, it was called Tsubasa, and it was really cool. I've seen it in like a thrift store once, and I've never seen anything else about this series, so it was really nice having someone to share that with. I also understand there's tons of people who were probably nowhere near as lucky as I was in being able to find someone who knew what anime was at that time. Any time that me or my friend tried to share our interests with other people, we would only get weird looks or further ostracized, so I know just how isolating it can feel. Let's just skip forward to COVID lockdown, where a bunch of people were inside more than ever, and all they had was watching TV shows, and they probably decided to take up anime during that time, especially considering there was a bunch of different celebrities coming out and speaking for their love of anime, which definitely helped push anime towards being mainstream. How do I feel about this? Well, I just feel still isolated, just now within my own community, because there is so many problematic people like clout chasers causing a ruckus inside of convention spaces, streamers also causing problems for people in public, giving those communities a bad reputation, problematic cosplayers. It doesn't change the fact that, like, originally you would immediately go talk to someone and ask them if they've seen anime before, and you would know that you would be friends if they said yes. Now there are just so many different kinds of people who watch anime, and many different types of anime watchers based on what they watch or how they consume media. Just because things are different now doesn't mean the solution is to like divide or have that us versus them mentality. You'd think that someone who has been ostracized or bullied for liking anime wouldn't want that, wouldn't want to, gatekeep or separate into two different groups, like, have some sense of like superiority over another. Let's circle back to Joey, particularly with the analogy he used related to the colonization of the Americas. Joey was basically deflecting criticism, even though he was the one to initially bring up politics. Adi Harajuku has a great video talking about this concept, and I do think that you should check them out. I really like a lot of the points that they said. Let's be honest here, if anime wasn't political, we would not be having this conversation. If anime is not that deep, saying that is basically a political stance in itself. Fair warning, we're going to be getting into some heavy topics. Colonization is a horrible topic, and the way that the Americas were colonized was brutal. I mean, really. Indigenous people were under the impression that the land was supposed to be shared and resources were supposed to be shared between groups, or it was going to be some kind of like temporary agreement. The concept of owning land didn't really exist. And so the groups that colonized the Americas were basically taking advantage of that. There was no concept of owning land. That is a complete foreign concept. In the West, you've probably heard about the concept of residential schools before, but for those who are not familiar with them, it's basically an event that happened where they were trying to take the in out of the child. That is currently considered a slur against Indigenous people, and that is actually a statement that was given by a former Prime Minister in Canada. And yes, it is just as bad as it sounds. You might be wondering, how is this relevant? And trust me, I am going to get there. These schools were brutal. Thousands of kids were murdered, and they were forced to cut their hair, convert to Christianity, and forced to even bleach their skin. Many of these children were tortured. Those who survived from the incident were left with irreparable damage to their mental health.
I guess it's just that family connection and just not having some kind of memory at times. And it always goes back to being robotic. No feeling, no emotions, no nothing. If you got hurt, no one was there to comfort you. You know, things that as a child I should have gotten.
Did your parents go to residential schools?
Yes, they did. She just told me that she had actually gotten punched in the face for speaking her language, and she flew across the room, she said, and landed against a rad, and her tooth protruded through her upper lip, so she had a scar on her lip. She also told us that she did not teach us her language, which was Ojibwe, because she didn't want us to experience what she went through.
It was so huge that bodies are still being discovered today because of the amount of children that were buried. You are probably asking, when was the last school that closed? The last one closed in the 90s. The final report of the Royal Commission of Aboriginal Peoples was released in 1996. For context, 1996 is the last year that is considered part of the generational group known as millennials. The same generational group that Joey the Anime Man is part of. I know that it's not Joey's fault that these incidents happened, but the consequences from those schools are very real consequences that affect real people. To this day, there is still a problem with murdered and missing Indigenous women and children. And due to racial profiling and lack of participation of local police force. In 2017, a book published by Tanya Talaga, Seven Fallen Feathers, discussed very real incidents about missing and murdered Indigenous children throughout the years of 2000 to 2011 in Thunder Bay, Ontario. My younger brother was born in 2012, and he's still in middle school. This is really only scratching the surface of what Indigenous communities face today. There are still problems with treaties being disrespected. There are still problems with their voices not being heard and lack of access of drinkable water on reserves. Residential school education was so horrible that no one could get jobs the survivors from those schools. And because of that, Indigenous people today still struggle and are facing generational poverty. We're basically super, super poor. For more information regarding residential schools or about the history that Indigenous people in Canada or in the US have faced, I would encourage you to refer to these resources up here. I'll try to throw them in my description as well. There are tons of people who are more educated than me, who know more about this topic, who could tell you the whole history and give you the whole perspective behind this. I genuinely think that Joey the Anime Man did not mean his comment to be harmful or offensive or derogatory in any way, but it is stemming from a place of ignorance. Maybe he is uneducated about the complete history, or maybe he didn't realize his comment would have negative consequences, but I still want to believe that Joey is a good person who didn't mean any harmful intentions. But it doesn't change the fact that he was the one to bring politics into the picture. And it doesn't change the fact that the colonization of the Americas had real consequences on very real people. This counts for the anime community as well. The ability to be able to read manga stems through politics. Being able to publish anime and TV shows stems from politics. Even when it comes to specific shows or TV shows, it doesn't matter if it's not obviously in your face or intended to be political, it will still be influenced by the ideas and opinions of the creators who made the art. Just decisions like how they portray female characters, whether or not they decide to have any sexist or stereotypical tropes involving the female characters. The choice to follow sexist caricatures versus non-sexist caricatures, that is political. Even the history behind slavery and systemic racism is relevant to the conversation. For example, if you look at a lot of older anime, sometimes they will have offensive portrayals or questionable concerning portrayals of POC or BIPOC characters. The idea of whether or not you choose to have a certain race for a character in a series is also a political stance. The choice of whether or not to have LGBTQ+ representation in media is also a political stance. And think about the history behind Yaoi and Yuri. LGBTQ+ people have always been in anime. You don't have to consume anime in an intellectual way. You don't have to have these conversations, but these conversations still exist whether or not you choose to participate in them. I strongly discourage anyone from going to someone's page and just spreading hate or nasty comments, such as someone like the Anime Man, even though he has a huge mass following. Just because of one mistake that he made doesn't necessarily mean he should be summarized to that mistake, and he should have any compassion that you would give to any real person in real life. Because, words that you say do have an impact on people. Please let me know what you think about the situation in the comments so that we can have a discussion. Is not just about one person, it's about a group and a community of people. And I am a tree. Thank you for watching my video. I suck at outros. If you like this video, check out my other stuff. It'll probably show up here. I'll probably also have a playlist up here for my cosplay stuff, because I also do cosplay, which is really cool. I do anime recommendations and video essays. I hope you like my stuff. Bye!